Football!
And what is up? Welcome, man. It is GC Live Thursday episode of the show. Maybe the only show we have this week, so we got a lot to get to. Wes Mitchell here, Mike Yuva joining us. Plenty to get to. First of all, Mikey, how we doing today, man?
I'm doing all right. Been an interesting day in the world of SEC football, but the good thing is for Gamecock fans, at least Saban will be speaking on one of the days that Shane Beamer will be speaking, which will be that Tuesday. It would have been great if Jimbo was speaking the same day as Saban. Maybe we'd get a steel cage match, right around the corner, in Atlanta, maybe in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but it's not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Yeah, it does all of a sudden feel like a scripted WWE event almost. I would dare say, I hate when radio and TV and just sports people in general, like, exaggerate everything, but I dare say I have never, at least in recent memory off the top of my head, I've never seen coaches go directly at each other the way these two guys are right now. So generally we keep this show South Carolina based, but on a day like today, especially in May when you get these fireworks, we're of course going to talk about the Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher drama. We're going to talk a bit about Freddie Kitchens and that role that he's going to have at South Carolina with him being added to South Carolina's football staff. And at the end, we'll probably talk a little bit about Mike's first ever trip to Dorman University, which is quite a sight. But first, got to tell you all about our buddy Clint Hammond. He is presenting sponsor on GC Live. The NMLS number is 71597. Email address is chammond@mortgagenetwork.com. You see his phone number right there, 803-576-4450. If you want to get in and buy a house before these interest rates keep on going up, hit Clint up and he'll help you through the process. Already got some folks in the chat. Appreciate y'all joining us on a little bit of sort of a different time than we normally do, but we wanted to hop on there. It is the off season, so we're going to let the off season guide our conversation. And Mike, this all started, if you're watching this live or listening to this on Thursday, this all started yesterday on Wednesday with comments from Nick Saban. And, first and foremost, Mike, I was a bit shocked for Saban to be as, I would say, just blatant as he was, just as outgoing as he was. Like, I don't know. Now, generally, Nick Saban is one of those guys that he has a reason for everything he says and does. It's very calculated. He's someone that, if you think you're a step ahead, he's probably 2 steps ahead. But with that in mind, I do wonder his motivation. So before we get into the just extremely pointed comments from Jimbo today, let's go back to Nick Saban's comments. The big one, he said, basically Texas A&M, quote, bought every player on their team, and then called out Deion Sanders and Jackson State for basically bragging about paying $1 million to a guy. Saban said, quote, our players last year created $3 million worth of opportunity for themselves by doing it the right way. I have no problem with that. Nobody had a problem on our team with that because the guys who got the money earned it. The issue and the problem with name, image, and likeness is coaches trying to create an advantage for themselves. Your just initial thoughts on Saban's comments at face value and his motivations for said comments?
I am a little surprised, not even just the fact that these two have a history of coaching with each other, right? I think the bigger thing that I'm surprised about is at the end of the day, coaches know that funny business goes on everywhere. I mean, that doesn't mean it's happening every single year, but there's funny business that goes on, especially when you've coached with someone before. So the fact that Saban would open up his mouth about this, like he knows the backlash is going to happen. And let's just, hypothetically say that some type of funny business has gone on over the last couple of years at Alabama. All it takes is one slip up to open up the can of worms. So I'm a little surprised that happened. With Jimbo, though, regardless of, and I put a little Twitter poll out a little while ago about, who do you believe? Do you believe Saban? Do you believe Jimbo Fisher? Do you feel like both of them are hiding something? Surprise, surprise, that the majority of the votes have been that they're hiding something. They feel like, people feel like they're both hiding something. I think this is an interesting stat, though, and this was actually shared on the Insiders Forum on Gamecock Central, and this is a tweet that one of our subscribers shared, so it's not their tweet, but this is the last couple of years. Jimbo at A&M, 2018, 0 5 stars. 2019, 2 5 stars. 2020, 2 5 stars. 2021, 1 5 star. Then you have the introduction of NIL. In 2022 so far, 7 5 stars in the highest rated class of all time. So I get where Saban would be upset. And the only thing I could think of for a motivation, for like a motive, Wes, and where I'm trying to go with all this, Nick knows he doesn't have too much time left. So if he feels like, hey, you know what? I only have a couple more years left. I want to be able to win another ring or 2 or 3. If I feel like people are playing unfair, even though I may have, and I'm not saying he has, but he may have, why not? Why not take a stab at it? So I think that it is uncharacteristic of Saban to say something like this, because like you alluded to, typically he's going to bite his tongue, very Belichick-like. The two have obviously coached in Cleveland together. I can't see a guy like Bill Belichick doing something like this. And before last night, I would have said that I would never have expected Nick Saban to do something like this as well.
Well, and in poker, they call this, Mike, when somebody's on tilt. That basically means that you let your emotions, you're so ticked off because of something that's happened. Maybe it's a bad beat. Something's just gone against you, that you start making decisions that you otherwise would not have made. And that in general usually means you make bad emotional driven decisions as opposed to calculated decisions. So I'm curious, and I don't really know yet which guy I think that fits. Like, is Saban sort of the calculated one, in that he's calling out A&M, while as we see a comment here from Will on YouTube saying that he's signaling to Bama's boosters like, hey guys, nobody does this better than us. Like, say what everybody's heard the rumors about Alabama for 3 decades, in recruiting players and doing what they have to do to sign players. So my question would be, is Saban the one who is ticked off, and he's the one acting emotionally because, in essentially Jimbo's words, Saban's not getting his way, so he's taking his ball and trying to go home, saying this isn't fair? Or is Saban the calculated one, and Jimbo in his press conference is the one who is on tilt and basically acting? Jimbo's definitely acting emotionally. He got very defensive. Essentially, like, I assume these guys were at some version of friends, before. Like, I know there was a level of respect. They had made playful comments towards each other, in the media or in these like booster sort of sessions before, but I thought it was in good fun. Neither guy is laughing right now. Like, it seems as if this friendship, if it was a friendship, or even just a working relationship, a respectful relationship, is over. But I don't know who's the emotional one and who's the calculated one, or are they both just being emotional?
No, and that's the thing. You mentioned, Will's comment, not Will Muschamp, Will McLean over here in our comment section here, saying, he feels like Saban's comments was a sign for Bama's boosters to step up, and Jimbo took the bait. I want to believe that everything that Nick Saban does is calculated, right? It would make sense. That's what he's done throughout his entire career. I mean, everything that he says, there's a reason. There's a reason why when he goes up to the podium, he comes across as a prick sometimes. The reason why he's doing that is because he's setting the tone for his players. I mean, it happens throughout sports all the time. The way that a coach is in front of the camera. I mean, going back during the Will Muschamp era, Wes, you had an opportunity just like me to be able to get to know Will. Will wasn't exactly the same exact way in front of the camera as he was away from the camera, right? So coaches try to set the tone when they're in front of the camera. Was he trying to set the tone and send the message to the boosters? It would make sense. It would make sense. But at the same time, too, you have to be. I mean, Saban's not that dumb. He knows that if he says something like this, it is going to irritate and piss off a lot of people, especially a guy that he coached with Jimbo Fisher. So I say all that because you hear that, the comments last night, you hear what Jimbo said today, which was Nick Saban reached out and tried to talk to him. And, Jimbo just declined that. You wonder if he left a message. Nick Saban seems like a guy that would still leave voicemails, be like, hey, Jimbo, sorry about but what do you say? What do you say? Like there's certain things, just think about it just in life. People make mistakes, especially if you're involved with the public, right? Whether it be social media or whatever. Even it doesn't even have to be a public figure. People on Twitter all the time. You see what someone tweeted or, hey, you know what? Not a fan of what you said. He had to have known the backlash was going to come. My question is, he calls Jimbo. Let's just say for the sake of the conversation, he left a voicemail because Jimbo obviously didn't pick up. What the hell are you going to say, right? I'm Nick Saban. I'm calling you, Wes. You're Jimbo. What the hell am I going to say to make you say, you know what, Nick? Hey, it happens, man. Don't worry about it. Because regardless if Jimbo and Texas A&M have some skeletons in their closet, and let's say there is something that happened from an NIL standpoint that has allowed these players to go to Texas A&M by giving them an advantage, a recruiting advantage. I agree with what Jimbo said, which is, the players, it's unfair for the players. The players get caught up on all this. Now, if the players were involved in some of this, though, that changes things. But right now, I mean, it's the easiest thing to do in college sports, which is just accuse someone of cheating through NIL, because right now it's really difficult to prove if someone has indeed cheated or not.
Yeah, it is, man. And I think the question, or the thought that comes to my mind is for the longest time, hasn't it felt, I mean, there are accusations of cheating in college sports for, since I would imagine since it has existed. I know certainly as long as I've been alive, that's been a thing. And, the buzzword is now NIL. It used to be, so-and-so got a car under the table or something like that would be the rumors that would go along. And you would hear coaches, as you said, maybe complain, oh, that guy cheated or something like that. I think this is a bit unique in the public nature of one SEC coach pointing direct fingers at another SEC coach with the added bonus of these guys used to work together. If Saban has skeletons, Jimbo probably does know about them. Saban probably has a pretty good idea of how Jimbo operates as well. To point fingers like that publicly doesn't seem like the door you wanted to open, in my opinion. And just the sports media world, the college football fans who thought this was going to be a boring May the 19th, as we actually are officially, do you know we're 100 days from the kickoff of college football? I think it's like 107 for South Carolina, but it's 100.
Yeah, 107 for South Carolina for September 3rd, and then just in general.
Yeah, 100 for that sort of week 0 type thing they do.
Yep.
So 100 days from kickoff. We didn't think we were getting these fireworks, and all of a sudden we do. But I'm with you, man. I don't know that you want to be pointing fingers, because it sort of goes back to, one of the oldest sayings. I've heard it since I was a kid. You shouldn't point fingers if you live in a glass house, or shouldn't throw stones if you live in a glass house. Neither side probably really wants the NCAA looking into every little piece of what they do, I wouldn't think. So I don't know. We're all enjoying it. I don't know if it's that smart necessarily if you're either one of these guys, in my opinion.
You know what's going to happen? Here's what's going to happen. You have two fan bases that are absolutely nuts. And Gamecock fans are nuts too, don't get me wrong. But you have two fan bases that are absolutely nuts in a good way, okay? Both fan bases have a bunch of money when it comes to wanting to do what they can to be able to help football. I mean, that's why we're talking about this conversation today. Where I'm going with all of this is, you don't think someone from A&M is pissed off at what Nick Saban said, and regardless if they feel like, you know, Jimbo's telling the truth or not, they're going to want to defend their coach. They're going to want to defend their university. They're going to invest money trying to find out if anything funny has gone on at Alabama. On the flip side, there's going to be an Alabama booster or two who's going to invest money trying to find out if Texas A&M has indeed done anything funny, not just this year, but since Jimbo Fisher has arrived. I don't know what's going to happen ultimately in the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, next couple of years, but I will not be shocked if we do see a domino effect at either one of these schools or something involving one of the guys that used to coach with Saban. And we're going to see a domino effect of just, oh boy, because all it takes is one coach to go down. And then you watch how quickly people will start blowing the whistle, trying to just save their reputation and be able to just kind of like they fell off the ship, just trying to grab onto anything to be able to keep themselves afloat. I don't feel like this is the end of this, not just between these two guys. Of course, we have SEC Media Days coming up in a couple months, but I feel like this could have opened up a can of worms that I don't think either coach was necessarily anticipating.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. So Deion Sanders has also tweeted, this was from 13 hours ago. He said, "You best believe I will address that lie Coach Saban told tomorrow. I was awakened by my son, Shadur, and that sent me the article stating that we paid Travis Hunter Jr. $1 million to play at Jacksonville State. We as a people don't have to pay our people to play with our people." Travis Hunter has also tweeted and said, "I got $1 million, but my mom still stays in a 3-bedroom house with 5 kids," laughing emoji. And Deion responded and said, "I don't even make $1 million." So this is, I don't know, man. It's unprecedented. In some ways, it's insane. In some other ways, it's if you're not one of the people involved, not one of the fan bases involved, you're probably sitting back enjoying.
When is Shane Beamer speaking again? When's the next part of the Beamer, the Welcome Home tour?
Well, that would be next Tuesday.
So at least he's got some time to be able to collect his thoughts, and because he's going to be asked this. He knows he's going to be asked this.
Well, so and Beamer did,
and he's been asked questions about NIL, like you said. He was asked a question about NIL actually last night. Mm-hmm. But the point, the thing is, and you know this, all these coaches, they're connected in some shape, way, or form. So it puts a lot of these other coaches in an uncomfortable spot, whether or not they know there's funny bits. I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't want to say necessarily Shane Beamer. There could be another coach in the SEC that knows, I'm just making this up, that knows the funny business that has gone on at Texas A&M or knows what Jimbo Fisher was talking about with Nick Saban. And they're sitting back saying, it's about time. It's about time someone said something, but I'm not going to be the one that speaks up. But it puts them in an uncomfortable spot because they're going to get asked these questions. And if they do know something, most likely they're going to play dumb because what's the point of getting involved with it all? But number two, now it's kind of like you're picking sides. And I mean, these two coaches, there's a tree that goes off left, right. They know each other very well. Beamer knows Saban. Beamer knows Jimbo Fisher. It's going to be interesting. I don't know the other road dog. I don't say road dog tour. That's what they did for Mississippi State. I don't know when some of these other booster tours that are going on for football, but keep an eye on some of the sound bites we get over the next couple of weeks because I think there might be one coach or two. Might be Lane Kiffin, might be Mike Leach. I feel like one coach or two will actually speak up and tell you how they really feel about all this.
So for those who are wondering, Beamer did speak a bit on it yesterday. This quote, Colin Taylor was there as well. I don't know if Colin was there when Beamer necessarily said this. So to accurately credit it, this is actually from Ben Portnoy from the State, who transcribed this. Beamer said, "I'm all for guys being able to profit." That word is added with quotes that Ben added it. I don't know exactly what he said. So I'm all for guys being able to profit from NIL, I guess is what Beamer was asked about. Quote, to carry on Joyner, for example, after that bowl game, I think he's brought in over 6 figures since that bowl game. Use it to put on a camp back in his hometown, which he did last weekend. Our players use some of that money to take underprivileged kids shopping on a shopping spree before Christmas. Parentheses, that's a Garnet Trust shout out. That's how the rule is intended to be used. What I don't like is it's turned into buying recruits, and that's not what the rule was intended to be. That's my honest, politically correct answer on all that. But I think most college coaches will tell you that the way it is right now is not sustainable, and it's not that it was intended to be. It's not what it was intended to be, I'm guessing. We need to figure out the best way to get it under control for us, the student athletes, and for everyone involved. You know, Mike, you read that, you hear that. That was a much more tame and much less directed at an individual. Saban went the direct, I'm about to call some people out and make a bunch of headlines route. But that was sort of Beamer's trying to say there, in his opinion, there's probably a pretty decent consensus within college coaches that we want players to be able to monetize their name, image, and likeness and profit from their brand, essentially, that they've created for themselves, but that it does need to be reeled in to an extent. Now, how you actually do that is anybody's guess. We can move on from this, man, but do you have any final thoughts, I guess, on what Beamer had to say?
No, not really. I mean, I think he's basically saying it without being as direct, which is like, hey, we know there's stuff going on. Like I said, these coaches all know each other. They know what's going on. I do want to mention this, though, Wes, since everyone's defending themselves today, shout out Jimbo Fisher, just to clarify things, because I've been asked this a couple times. I know we've seen this on the message boards. Garnet Trust has nothing to be worried about right now. So if you're a supporter of Garnet Trust with the NIL rules that have changed and you keep hearing NIL, this and that, this has no impact on that whatsoever, because we're not dealing with prospects. We only deal with the kids that are actually here. So I just wanted to mention that because I know that's been brought up over the last couple of weeks, and rightfully so. There's a lot of gray area right now in the world of NIL. But if you are a Garnet Trust supporter, if you're someone that wants to look into Garnet Trust, this is something that strictly deals with student athletes once they're here. And it has nothing to do with the rules that have recently changed by the NCAA.
Which is how NIL was designed. When you are a student athlete and you have a following, you have a brand, especially the big thing, y'all, where the guys have been able to create value is more in social media following. Like if you have a huge social media following, that's where you look at Spencer Rattler. You have, I think it was 400,000 or so people on his Instagram. That's when you start to get the national brands involved because they see an audience there that is a captivated audience too, that wants to hear from Spencer Rattler, wants to see what he's doing. And so then it becomes more than like a local thing where you're going to have a lot of local, like mom and pop stores want to advertise. It becomes more of a national thing. And that, in my opinion, is where the guys can truly make some money, but the value is actually there for the company as well, for the person who wants that player to speak for them. That's what NIL was initially supposed to be. That's what it's built for.
What's a carry on Joyner? I mean, that's the reason Boomer brought him up. Like, he is a prime example. And you mentioned, Wes, for our Gamecock Central subscribers, if you're not a subscriber, go check out On3. That's one of the neat things. You can actually get a ballpark of what some of these athletes are worth. And I think Spencer is around 1.2 million, but that takes into consideration the reach they have from a social media standpoint on top of how they're performing on the field. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole, it is pretty neat. It has football, basketball, pretty cool to just check that stuff out on 3.
And you know who actually, other than, I would say, other than Rattler, who obviously comes in with a national brand already well intact, it's the women's basketball players and the followings that they have been able to build up that I think has proven to be extremely valuable. Absolutely. And again, it's not in fake value in this stuff that, this conversation with Jimbo and Dion and Saban and all that. That's more about just creating an inflated value in order to get players. This is more about rewarding someone for the actual following that they do have. And the South Carolina women's basketball players have been, been able to monetize their brands incredibly well when it comes to that stuff. I'm looking right now. Rattler has 389,000 followers on Instagram. I'll tell you who, a South Carolina student athlete that is going to, maybe y'all didn't realize this yet, but probably has a chance to really monetize his brand, and I believe probably already has, would be the transfer Michi Johnson from Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 116,000 followers on Instagram and 86,000 followers on TikTok. So that's again, that's not that this show was built around us talking about IG and TikTok, but it's become, Mike, that's a part of the sports conversation when it comes to NIL. But let's get it back to football, man. Let's talk a little bit of local news that actually affects the Gamecocks. That would be the hire of Freddie Kitchens as South Carolina's senior offensive analyst. And, I know you and I were texting. We were texting our Gamecock Central group text. This is something that's sort of been formulating, sort of been in the works for a little while. Freddie has been spotted in Columbia, as you said. I had heard this was going to be a possibility, but I wasn't sure, A, if it was really going to happen, B, when it was going to be official. But it is officially official. South Carolina announced it yesterday. And I'll go ahead and let you give your thoughts on it, Mike. But I'll say this. I think it's a very sharp move by Shane Beamer to add the experience that Kitchens has to this South Carolina coaching staff.
Well, let's start with this, because naturally people are going to look at this hire and they're going to think back to when he was coaching the Cleveland Browns. I get that. I understand. I totally get that. But you realize that this man was not only the Mr. Football of Alabama coming out, right? He was a phenomenal football player back in the day. He has plenty of experience of coaching, obviously, in the NFL, but he has plenty of experience of coaching in the SEC as well. You think about Mississippi State, you think about LSU. This is a guy that has worked with some pretty talented players too, right? You think about being with the Arizona Cardinals when they went to the Super Bowl and they lost to the Steelers, and being able to, work with some talented guys. Think about Carson Palmer. So, I say that because I think it's so easy just to look at and be like, oh my goodness, the Cleveland Browns. We get that. Okay. It's part of his legacy. That doesn't define him though. I mean, think about from a college standpoint, Tim Tebow. Oh my God, Tim Tebow. Oh, what an awful NFL player. Does that mean Tebow just absolutely sucked as a football player? No. I mean, freaking won a Heisman. He's probably one of the greatest college players of all time. So, this is, I think, low risk, high reward. You mentioned before, Wes. I don't think we've shared this anywhere because I don't know, didn't know if it really made sense to share it. But yeah, like you mentioned, Kitchens was here in Columbia. One of his children was getting recruited for a sport here at South Carolina. So he had been spotted the last couple months. So, he knows where to go to eat. I can tell you that much. But it's gonna be good. And you think about what Georgia did, right, with Will Muschamp this past year. You think about what Alabama has done in terms of the rehabilitation coaching additions, right? This is something that we've seen a lot of successful teams do in college football, especially the SEC. So, not saying that Freddie needs, rehabilitation. I mean, it's always just the funny phrase that people like to talk around about some of these coaches, but I think this is a tremendous hire, and I think there's going to be a lot of benefits that will come from it with having a guy like Kitchens, because some people are just going to look at it and be like, oh, Freddie from the Browns? No. This guy brings a lot of good things to the table.
Yeah, and I think there are two things I wanted to hit on, and that was one of them, Mike. Not to say this to I don't know, talk down to anyone, because I haven't really seen this sentiment from a ton of people, but you're right, there have been a few people. If you're sitting there maybe looking at or trying to judge his ability to do what he's being hired to do at South Carolina based on 1 year as an NFL head coach, you're just not, you don't get it, honestly. Like, you're just not getting it because this is a senior offensive analyst role. So there's very little carryover, I would say, to being successful in this role that would also have any, I would say, carryover from being an NFL head coach. If anything, just the sheer experience of everything you would have to be involved in to be a head coach at the highest level that exists in football, I believe, is what Shane Beamer values. He talked yesterday at the Welcome Home Tour about having another guy who has head coaching experience.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I think I've noticed more and more the last year, being around the program a bit, seeing what Beamer values, he leans on Pete Limbo a lot, who is the other coach on this staff that has head coaching experience. And I think there's a balance on this staff, right? Like, Beamer had I would say, no qualms about bringing in someone like Sterling Lucas, who is in his very first on the field college football assistant job. So I'm thinking off the top of my head, I think Sterling's the youngest guy on staff. So, but also he's brought in guys who have experience, who have played or coached at the highest of levels. And I think when you look at Kitchens, man, this guy has been in the NFL in one role or another for around 15 years. Mm-hmm. If you were in the NFL for that long, one, you're doing something right, because they will kick you out in a second. Two, you've learned a lot. Like, you've about seen it all. So I think this hire, in my opinion, is just about, one, it made sense. Beamer said he was around the staff. All the guys got along. All the guys clicked. I think that was important as far as this is concerned. But two, you're adding another resource for Marcus Satterfield. You're adding another resource for your offensive players. You're adding a guy who, like you said, has been around some guys that are at the top or close to the top of their game. So of their level, I should say. So, I mean, I don't really see any downside at all, and it's not like he's coming in as the offensive coordinator. He's coming in to do a specific task. And I think it's great. I mean, this thing, I Googled Freddie Kitchens yesterday. This made like national headlines as far as the NFL wires go, because this guy was in the league for, again, around 15 years.
He has a lot of experience, and I think the good thing, too, is what it shows is that Shane Beamer is willing to show some humility. And what I mean by that is you can never have too many good guys around you. Nick Saban has shown it, too, over the years with the number of head coaches that they've brought in, whether they be a senior analyst, whether they be part a coordinator or one of the, positional coaches. But you mentioned it before. I mean, being able to have a guy like Pete Limbo already, and then just adding extra pieces, guys that have had head coaching experience, it's just going to free up Shane. That's going to allow him to be able to focus on other things that will allow this program to take that next step. That's not saying that he's going in there each day and he's not, doing anything, but he's going to be able to really focus on the whole picture. And not to, harp on Will Muschamp, but, one of the things that Marcus Lattimore and I discussed on our podcast is that he felt like with Will, there was too much going on and he really wasn't able to focus in on it. And because of that, there was a lot of times where, whether it be in a positional room, whether it be in the weight room, the messages were all different. And he really wasn't able to just make sure that everyone was on the same page. By doing this, by being able to have additional voices in that room that are all speaking the same language and they all understand the message, it's going to allow Shane to be able to hop around a little bit more freely and be able to make sure that everything is running smoothly in the way that it needs to and all being pulled in the same direction. I know that sounds cliche. I know that sounds like, well, that's what it should be. You'd be amazed at how quickly some of those messages are the complete opposite on one side of the building in comparison to the other side. I mean, I went through it myself in college, just at a smaller level. I mean, I can only imagine at the SEC in a much bigger building, literally, how quickly that message can change. So I think being able to have these extra guys on top of the resources that you mentioned, I think it's just going to allow Shane to be able to overlook things a little bit better. Picture it this way, right? Shane's like in the 10th row of the stadium. Now he's like at the 50th row because he's really able to get a full view of the field and what's going on. So if you want to have just a comparison of what that's going to allow him to do in comparison to where he was last season in his first year as head coach.
Before we go any farther, I want to tell you about our other sponsor here on GC Live. It is our friends at Liberty Tax here in Columbia. Their number is 803-462-5576. As most of you probably know, tax time is over. If you have not done your taxes, A, you should probably get on that. B, give our friends at Liberty Tax a call. They can help you file an extension. They have locations open Monday through Friday. If you own a small business and need advice, they have bookkeeping and payroll services for LLCs, S Corps, and C Corps. Or if you owe some money to the IRS, meet with their local professionals that they can represent you to help you settle your debt. They have a new Columbia location, 551 St. Andrews Road by Harbor Freight. They also have a Lexington office by the Dunkin' Donuts at 1123 South Lake Drive, and in Irmo by the Kroger at 7467 St. Andrews Road. Again, that's our friends at Liberty Tax in the Columbia area, 803-462-5576. Mike, before we close it out here, I do want to get to your Dorman trip, but senior offensive analyst. Mm-hmm. I know Beamer said yesterday they're still sort of, I would say formulating exactly what that is going to mean I would imagine on like a day-to-day basis. Like what are you going to be doing on your day-to-day? But in general, these roles, in my experience, especially, at SEC programs where you have, again, I'll use the word resource. You have so many resources if you are a player or a coach at this level. And generally that job means a lot of scouting, I believe. This is someone that can help in game planning. This is someone that can help not only on scouting opponents, but also with self-scouting. Like what tendencies if I'm the play caller, what tendencies am I producing that maybe I'm not realizing because I'm too close to it? What would you be seeing if you were an opponent? It kind of gives you an additional set of eyeballs from somebody that has experience, maybe game planning or scouting an opponent, but you apply that to yourself. So I would look at scout, maybe some analytics type stuff. But there's been this other, I would say, thought that's been thrown out there on Twitter. Somebody asked me about it. Somebody mentioned it on our board. This is not a Marcus Satterfield backup plan. If things go bad, this is not, we're making this hire to put pressure on Satterfield and have someone looking over his shoulder. If anything, this hire helps Marcus Satterfield. If anything, it's an extra resource. And these two guys know each other. There's a respect level that's already there. The coaching, Beamer would not have made this hire if the coaching staffs did not get along, if he didn't get along with the guys on the coaching staff in their experiences together already. So I want to go ahead and kind of put to bed that notion, but also put forward this notion, because it's my opinion, that if you have somebody in that role with the experience of Kitchens, it can be very valuable for someone who, in my opinion, Satterfield is an extremely smart football mind. Like this guy knows football. He knows X's and O's, Mike. The issues on offense from last year could be highly correctable. And I think having another guy in the room to help bounce ideas off of, to help give another opinion, to sometimes be the devil's advocate on stuff, can be highly valuable if all this clicks together.
Yeah, I think we've got to a point, too, where you, myself, whoever, right? It doesn't matter. Beamer, we can say this X, Y, and Z about Marcus Satterfield. We can say this about the offensive line. I think from a fan perspective, they just want to be able to see it, right? I mean, we can break things down. We can explain why certain things happened. We feel like the offense will be able to take that next step for multiple reasons, right? I mean, obviously it starts with, Spencer Rattler. Then you look at the outside with adding guys like Antoine Wells Jr., look at a tight end like Austin Stogner. I think about a guy like Christian Beal-Smith at running back. So there's no question about that. But I think offensively with Satterfield, things are going to be all right. I think the neat thing about this is you have a new tight ends coach, right, coming in here. And Jody Wright has worked with has worked with him the last couple of years. Worked with Kitchens in New York, and actually 2 seasons ago, Kitchens was the tight ends coach. So you talk about an extra set of eyes. You talk about an extra set of just experience out there, especially at a tight end room. And I'm not saying that Jody wouldn't be capable of being able to handle the room by himself, but it's going to be nice. It's going to be nice to be able to walk in there and you have a guy that has a lot of experience with coaching tight ends. So you look at certain positions that South Carolina has, right? You mentioned Sterling, being able to bring that experience from a defensive line standpoint, having coached in the NFL. I mean, now you have both sides of the ball. Obviously Marcus Satterfield as well, but now you have guys that you add depth on both sides of the ball of guys that have coached at that next level. And, that's the dream for a lot of these guys, right? I mean, I remember Lattimore telling me in 2018 that 99% of the guys that come in on scholarship, they truly believe they're going to go play in the NFL. So it will help them from a recruiting standpoint. It will help them from a preparation standpoint heading into games, and it will help them next year as well in the offseason because you're able to just look at things in a different manner in terms of trying to find ways of being better because, hey, I want to go play at the next level. All right, coach. Well, what do you think I need to do? So I think it's going to be something that's going to benefit this team throughout the entire year, not just one facet or just two little areas.
SC Scout Guy asks, what exactly do the official rules say that Kitchens will be able to do as far as his contact with players at practice and games? That is a fantastic question. I'm not going to BS you. I feel like there's some gray area when it comes to analysts as far as what they're able to do and what they're not able to do. So I don't want to give you a wrong answer, Scout Guy. I can tell you this. They cannot go on the road recruiting. That's a definite no. That's only the on the field coaches, your official assistant coaches, and your head coach during certain times that can go on the road recruiting. They can meet with recruits while they are on campus. That is allowed. So as far as actual practice, your analysts are not coaches. Like they're not your on the field coaches like your regular assistants, but they can, I believe, be at practice and certainly will be around the team on game day as well. I think they can even be in the box. And Mike, I think they can have a headset on as long as you are still under or at your limit. There's a limit on the guys that can be on the headsets.
It's pretty like they can't give like any like major coaching in those. They can give like words of encouragement or there's just like you said, there's gray area. I don't want to misspeak and tell you guys something because the reason why is a lot of these rules continue to change.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to make sure that I'm up to speed with them all before I say they can and can't do this. But I mean, for the most part, like you said, there's certain things that they can and can't do from a recruiting standpoint. I mean, big picture is this: you have an extra set of ears and eyes. I mean, that's what it comes down to, and you have experience in the building. It's not like this guy's gonna not have a desk or he's going to be, thrown in the janitor's closet and you have to go find him. No, you're going to be able to see him in the building. You're going to have opportunities to talk with him. But it's not the orthodox, coach on the sideline game day, coaching you up in the huddle and all that kind of stuff. But that's not why you're bringing them in here. You're bringing them in for kind of the behind the scenes stuff. If the best way to describe it, he's kind of like the iron. Right. He's going to be kind of making the shirt nice and smooth, getting all the wrinkles out. You just have a really nice added iron at your disposal, not some rinky dink red roof in iron, that's going to probably stain your shirt and burn a hole through it.
A Hilton iron, like a real nice.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There we
Hyatt,
go.
maybe. Big Red says, are analysts more or less assistants for the official coaches? I would say in some cases, yes, Big Red. Also, I think that adding senior into the title, I think gives him. He's not going to be getting anybody coffee. Let's put it like that. Like I don't want it to sound like that. I think if you're a senior offensive analyst and you're a former NFL coach or a former NFL head coach, your opinion actually matters. Like you're not like you have like grad assistants that are guys that are coming up.
Wes, that's a good way to describe it. They're honestly they're a grad assistant, but they don't have to do the the coffee duties, right? Like they're not going to have to be the ones putting all like the strategy. It's not as grueling. It's a glorified and more advanced grad assistant in a lot of cases. But like you mentioned before, they're still working out through the details and everything. When it comes to senior analysts, it can be a little bit, not exactly. It's kind of like snowflakes. They're not going to be exactly identical to another, but it's kind of like a advanced level of being a grad assistant, but not having to do some of the rinky-dink tasks that come with being a GA.
Yeah, the GAs are the guys who they're going to have to go get the coffee. They're going to get the donuts. They're going to have to do the GA description is do whatever the head coach or whatever the assistant coaches in a lot of cases tell you to do. So not quite as much of that, but yeah, good question there, Big Red. So Mike, you went to Dorman University for the first time. I warned you, man, that place is incredible. First of all, you met DJ Geth, new offer for South Carolina, offensive lineman. I watched your video. He looked like he was kind of grinning the whole time about the offer and really excited. His dad actually played basketball at North Carolina. So from what I've heard, the in-state pool of South Carolina and then right across the border there, North Carolina, that's probably the two schools to watch as far as his offers right now. But what did you think watching him and talking to him? And obviously, man, a big kid. And I'll say this too, Mike. DJ's got he's going to keep growing, I think, because he's got the baby face. Like he's like 6'5", 6'6", 300 pounds, but I think there's still some physical development as far as strength and maturity and stuff like that is to come.
Yeah, that's the first thing I noticed, and no disrespect to our guy Dustin Curtis and the phenomenal job that Dorman, I can't even speak, Dorman does out there, because they got a state-of-the-art facility when it comes to their weight room, to their football field, to the practice fields, just their buildings that I saw on the outside. But once you get to college, it's a different animal when it comes to weightlifting. So you talk about some of that baby fat on him. I mean, this is a young man that, even though, like you said, 6'6", 300 pounds, he's got plenty of areas where he can gain some muscle and be just even more freakish of an athlete than he already is. And then just the footwork and being able to clean up on some of that. But I was impressed. I mean, I only saw practice for a little bit yesterday. I think what I really liked about him is just the explosiveness out of just the first couple steps. And that's what you're looking for when you're talking about an offensive lineman. I mean, the fact that Greg Atkins goes up there Monday and he sees just a little bit of practice and was like, all right, that's what I'm liking, on top of the fact that they've been talking to him, obviously, for the last couple of months. But you see that, like, that's what you're looking for. You go up at practice, when you hear about players being offered on the spot, or maybe like this case after the practice on Monday, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for, okay, we're looking for one or two things. Is this kid ready right now? And if they see it and they feel like they can develop him and be able to help him take his game to the next level, they're going to make him that offer. So this isn't something that I've had a conversation with Greg Atkins about, but I'm telling you that if you did, this is exactly what he would tell you. This is something that they felt good about. But going up there on Monday, they're seeing we're looking for one or two things. And I'm assuming, based on what I saw, the explosiveness, the low pad level, that's what stood out to him. So he one thing that was neat, though, I mean, that he talked about, and we've talked about this before, especially going back to the spring game, just the way these recruits are really being drawn in by the atmosphere at Williams-Brice. I mean, that was one of the things that DJ mentioned. I think he called the little towels being spun around for Sandstorm. So, the atmosphere, the fans are certainly doing their part. Wins and losses, that plays a big part of it too, to a degree. But being able to create that atmosphere. I mean, the game that he talked about, Wes, was the Kentucky game. Of course, South Carolina lost that night. But, I mean, shoot, you wouldn't know that by the look on his face, because he was just so blown away by the atmosphere that night. So, I think in the moment, we don't really think about it. If you're a fan, you're looking at it like, oh, we lost. But it's just like, if you're coming out there, win or lose, creating a great atmosphere, you have no idea the impact that can make on a recruit when they are up there making their visit.
Yeah, you're right, man. And I think a lot of times fans do sort of, obviously, they're focused on the wins and the losses.
And rightfully so. We get that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's ultimately that's why you play the game, for wins and losses. But the recruits don't really watch the games necessarily. Now they want to win in general, but I've always told fans recruits don't choose a school because of any one single win or loss. Now, trends maybe, obviously they're not picking Alabama and Ohio State and Clemson for nothing. Like, they're picking them because those are winning programs. But if you have a guy on your campus and my team lost this game, he's not going to not come to your school just because you lost if everything else went well. And that's why it's important to get these guys on campus. They had a huge list of visitors for that Kentucky game, huge crowd, great atmosphere. Did not go the way they wanted, but
Yeah, there was a lot of recruits there that night for the Kentucky game. You
there
remember
was.
that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
We'll
yeah,
talk about that story another day.
they were packed in, apparently. But Chef Thomas Dickerson says South Carolina needs to offer some Lower Richland kids. They've got some under the radar athletes. Lower Richland has a kid, Nate Branch. I've watched play. I think he just got a Kentucky offer last week. Really solid under the radar player. So good call, Chef Thomas Dickerson. Not sure about any of the other guys. Maybe you got some other names, but Nate Branch, really good receiver that people brag on locally. Mike, what did you get to see the weight room? Did you go in there?
I only saw a video. I went into the locker room. So when they were doing their stretch period, Dustin drove me down so I can actually see the stadium itself, which was just absolutely incredible. I can't even imagine. He was sharing stories of what it was like when Burns, and obviously this is being relayed to him, but when Burns was one of the top ranked teams in the country during those Lattimore days, and they came in and they played there, and there was 13, 14, 15,000 people there. Just seems like a great venue to watch football. But he showed me the video, the weight room. He showed me the locker room itself and some of the things that they're going to be doing there. I mean, it's like a mini college. I mean, my high school now is better shape, I think, than my college in a lot of regards for a Division II school. But even that school, I mean, there's a lot of things that Dorman would be able to compete with in terms of just facility wise. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And then I didn't even realize that the freshman building was across the street. I mean, that's
Freshman campus.
How many kids go there? Any idea?
I have no idea, man. I just know that place is phenomenal. I had been there a few times because they've had some of the Shrine Bowl practices there over the years. I had not been in the weight room until a few weeks ago when I went and met with Marquis Anderson, and Dustin Curtis showed me the weight room and their basketball. Their gym is super nice too, man. And they've got players. They've got.
I can see that. I can see that being an area that, to answer Big Red's question, are we establishing a pipeline of players at any one school? Wes, you might have more intel than me. I don't know if there's specifically a school right now. I feel like it's just still so early. I mean, obviously those relationships are being built, especially when you talk about the in-state schools. But you look at a school like Dorman, just because of how large it is and just how many athletes that are there. Dustin Curtis is a hell of a coach. And that's not saying that Dorman did not have a good coach before by any means, but he's a younger coach. He's adjusting to where the game is headed. And I think he's going to be able to develop a lot of players over there that I'm not going to be shocked over the next couple of years to see a couple of players from Dorman come to South Carolina, and especially a handful of them be Division I guys. I think they're going to do a phenomenal job over there, and I think with Dustin Curtis, they're a guy that has proven to be a winner here in the Midlands. I think he's going to be able to get it done up there as well.
Well, and the thing to watch there is Dorman has traditionally been the opposite of a pipeline for South Carolina. And now you have two guys in Marquis and DJ who are giving South Carolina a true look. Like
changes the fence. It changes that fence. Everyone, that imaginary fence of keeping guys in state. I mean, that challenging part, Wes, and you've seen it from your years of recruiting. It's a tricky spot. That Spartanburg, Greenville area. Mm-hmm. I don't know where you would say kind of that cutoff line is in terms of where you've seen more players, like once they get to that Spartanburg area, maybe go to Clemson or, so if you're able to start breaking in to some of these areas and you're able to extend that fence, I mean, that could be the difference. That could be the difference between a team that has 6 or 7 wins or a team that gets, 9 or 10.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And if they can bust in with 2 guys out of Norman in the same class,
It's big boys too.
it helps. It helps. And obviously, this is going to be a pretty big O-line class, I think, for South Carolina. I think they want to take 4 or 5 guys. Those guys, DJ Geth and Marquis Anderson, could easily be 2 of them. All right, Mike, let's get out of here, man. I think we've hit on everything we got to hit on. Hopefully this, I got a feeling this Saban, Jimbo, Dion drama, it's probably got a few more little twists and turns for us, so we can look forward to that, man. But I appreciate the time, man.
Yes, sir. Take care, guys.
All right, he's Mike. I'm Wes. This has been GC Live. Thanks to Clint Hammond. Check him out, clinthammond.com. And, of course, our friends at Liberty Tax, the tax team at the Columbia Liberty Tax locations. Give them a call, and they can help you through any tax woes that you may have. 803-462-5576. Until next time, y'all have a good one.